Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Well, Melissa, we've been talking about getting back to some basics with the self-awareness journey.
I know. I'm really excited for this.
Because and you wanted to talk about triggers because you've been seeing a lot of people on the edge lately, been working with them to get back to like their more centered self. So let's first talk about the beginning a little bit of the self-awareness journey. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that have been kind of with us for a long time.
Yeah, and they already know the story, but I think it's worth repeating, at least in this context.
But, and there's a lot that haven't. So I just wanted to go back and just talk with you about like, what was like the beginning of the self-awareness journey for you? Like, what were you noticing with your clients and in your coaching practice that kind of got you to think about this idea of, you know, authentic self versus your actor self and triggers and kind of moving between these two states?
I think I would frame it in a way that I've never actually talked about it before, but I really think the further I get from that period of time in my life, the better I see it. And I would say that I had been coming off of a period of time where I was doing a lot of self-reflection and a lot of growth. I had over the years, I'd gone to therapy. You know, I had a lot of things that had gone on in my life that I felt better about working on myself. You know what I mean? And I had certain ways of acting when I was with different people. Like I would be myself with my family, but then if I was with someone new, I felt this need to either impress them or to put my best foot forward. And I would behave in a certain way. And this was not a conscious effort, but you know, when you're a high extrovert, it's very normal for you to want to be the people you are around as a way to make people feel comfortable. That is a very natural tendency. But what I also recognize is I could pick that up in other people really, really intuitively. Like I could feel when other people had a titch of nervousness and were jumping in and being the same way. I could feel that. And then I started noticing, so that's on one side of the self-awareness journey. And along with that, starting to think about what makes people do that. You know, when you feel this like obligation, need, desire, or what have you, to fit in or to look a certain way, or at least try to be you on your best day, if something triggers us to not be able to do that, we have a really big emotional reaction in response to it. Now, whether we show that on the outside or not is immaterial. Is what we're talking about is stuff that you're feeling on the inside, right? And I think that, so what happened is while I was in this journey myself, I was coaching a couple people individually. And when I was trying to describe this feeling that I was noticing in them, and I was using my own examples to do so, they were like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I feel. And I started recognizing that it was not a Melissa pattern. This is a people pattern.
A human pattern, a human trait.
Exactly. And so then are born the conversation that I'm excited to have today about triggers and how people react to things and how it pushes them outside of their good me on my best day zone.
Yeah. When you first started talking about this, you know, we were having coffee or something. I don't know what we were, but we got together. And then you were like, hey, I have this idea and this visual. And then you like wrote it on the receipt of the coffee shop.
I know.
I still have it. It's around here somewhere.
That is awesome. Well, you can't read it. So I don't feel like you've got like any encrypted law or anything because you can't read my dang writing.
So this idea that you get triggered.
Yeah.
Like what, like more specifically, like, let's just talk about, you know, like you're going along your day and then there's this, something happens and you get triggered and you get kind of knocked off center.
Yeah. Yep. I will tell you that it isn't even you're going along your day. I think you haven't even gotten your second foot on the floor from getting out of bed, and your brain starts to act. And you might wake up feeling good. You've had a sleep, you're reset, your energy is ready, on a lot of days. Maybe not every day. Maybe some days you wake up triggered, but a lot of times you wake up sort of neutral. And your brain starts to sort of think about, okay, now I'm going to get up for, I got to get up for work. I'm doing this. And then all of a sudden you just have this little tink like, oh, I have this going today. Or I'm going to talk to this person today. Or I haven't done what I said I was going to do. Or I've let myself down, or what have you. A whole host of things hit us in our brain, and it triggers us to having an emotional response that's not favorable. Makes us feel like we're failing in some way, we're not good enough in some way, or certainly we feel a pressure in some way.
So those emotions are generally around like anxiety, like doubt.
I think
what else?
Yeah, those are great.
Fear, maybe, like or scared to go do something that feels unsafe in the future that you have to do.
Right. Or you're just dread. Dread is a great word. I used to say all the time, and my coach that I worked with for years, I remember one time after years of talking with her, she said, I can't tell you how often you say, oh, I feel bad. That makes me feel bad. That was a phrase that I used. But so feeling bad, just generally, whatever that might be, or just dread. Like I'm dreading this. I'm dreading the feeling of that. I'm dreading the completion of this, or what have you. I think those are really common feelings that are triggers. And we don't think of them like that because, when you say a word like trigger and you go on Google, it's like, well, here's all the psychoanalysts of this, and here's the academic description of that. It's like, forget that. It's just a feeling in your butt, in your bones that something's not good.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the key thing. And so often we can mean well. We judge ourselves on our intent, and we judge others on their actions. So if our intent is to be the best that we can be, and we're just not feeling like we're doing that at any given moment, that can spool us off, into a whole another area.
So, so many of us are, kind of in this, what I always call stuck in the middle zone, where it's just like, we have pretty demanding careers. We've got families and kids. We've got aging parents. We've got and, we've got the financial pressure. We got all this responsibility, and we got to get dinner on the table for the kids tonight. It's just like a pressure cooker all the time. And so the almost baseline of amount of like sort of emotion is real high.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot to tip you over.
Right. And today's economic climate and today's political climate is making people, and this is why I was just sort of excited to talk about this today, because, and this isn't going to be a political debate, but I don't think we can talk about triggers without talking about the climate that exists today. Because people are wound up. People are anxious. People are scared. People don't feel safe. And even if you're in that very small minority that does feel safe, you're surrounded by others that do not. And I think that does eat away at us as human beings. So I feel like everybody's more amped up than even normal.
And I've talked about this quite a bit before, but to me, the way, like, news media, social media, the way we consume media is kind of designed to keep us at sort of a high anxiety state.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of what keeps us addicted to going back to watching more.
Yeah. Right.
So that does not help
our
case as individuals if we're constantly being bombarded, good or bad. It's like even if news media is good, it still comes at you in a way that creates a lot of emotion. So
I agree, and I just think, like, if the people that are listening to this are interested, on our website, theselfawarenessjourney.com, we do have what's called a roadmap. And it shows sort of this state that we bounce back and forth from on a one-page picture that I just still love. I pulled it up this morning. I hadn't looked at it in a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden, like 2 weeks ago, I just started having use for it over and over and over again. And I was like, wow, what is this? Then I realized, oh my gosh, it's because people are feeling like they're reaching out, seeking support because they're triggered and they don't know they're triggered and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing what you just said. They don't know that they're triggered. And that's what I wanted to ask you about next is that, again, when I kind of think about these things, I think of it like a glass of water, right? Like if you're, I don't know, if you were the most Zen Buddhist ever and you'd been meditating in the forest forever, your glass is probably empty, right?
No,
like,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
no,
I think it's half full.
it's half full, or
Yes.
some, there's some in there, but
Yes.
it's,
Yeah.
but
It's
a
lower
lot
than
of
the
us
average.
are operating where the glass is like almost full, and any
Yes.
little bit more emotion that we
Yeah.
pour in there, it just
Yeah.
overflows. So it
Yeah.
overflows easily. But you've talked a lot about how this stuff physically manifests, and with the idea that like maybe our water level's so high all the time we don't notice that it's so close to the top because that's just where it's been for years and years or decades.
Yeah.
Um,
We normalize the feeling of
yeah,
anxiousness. We normalize the feeling of nervousness.
and then you've talked about how if you start, where does this feel in your body?
Yeah.
Not using
Yep.
your head so much to think about things, but where you feel it. So talk to me about like how do you start noticing where this shows up physically
Yeah.
for you?
This is such a great question. I think that when people are unaware of their own really subtle emotions that are driving them or responses to things, the body always tells us before anything else. The body is the best billboard, and it will assign places to hold different emotions. I have never said it like that, but it is like an assignment almost. For example, I always talk about the feeling of anxiety. I talk about the feeling of nervousness. And for me, that resides in my stomach. And it feels like there's a ball of just hard stress that sits in my stomach if I'm really, really, if I'm really upset about something or anxious. If I get really angry, for example, it sits in my head, across my forehead and kind of almost by my ears. I feel like this pressure or like this heaviness. And, or if I'm feeling like I'm not able to have a voice or I have a disagreement with someone, even if it's somebody I don't know well, but I feel a response that is opposite to what they may be presenting. And I feel like I want to just, say something. My throat feels tight. I get a tightness in my throat and at the top of my chest, and it feels like heavy and just like a solid something right there. So using these, let me, before I keep going, how about you? Like, where would you feel, if you feel nervous, where do you feel nervous?
Yeah, good question. My nervousness definitely comes from a little kind of more my gut,
In
like
your
a little
gut?
lower. And stress and anxiety is like in my shoulders, like a little
Okay.
higher.
Oh, that's interesting because you
Yeah.
separated those two feelings. That's
Yeah.
awesome. How about when you're happy?
Mm,
How do you feel? What does your body feel like when you're happy?
yeah, I think that's more like on the top of my head. I think I
Really?
feel like lighter.
That's awesome. My happy is across my face. Like I just feel a great big grin. And I also feel buoyed. My whole body feels like bouncy. Like I just feel lighter.
That's a
Like
good way to describe it.
I just want to bounce
Yep.
if I'm really happy. But here's the thing. A lot of times if you've suffered through your emotions and been told that they were not right, or that you were wrong for having emotions, you're still having them all the time, but you've normalized them to the point where you maybe don't even recognize it. And so the way through that is to be able to recognize where your body is responding to things in any given moment. And that is the key.
Mm.
Once you recognize that, you can really start to unpack, what is it that's on your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind then takes that information that the body is sending it
Yeah.
and then translates it into
Yeah.
what the brain thinks it is. But by the way, the brain's not always right.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure.
It's a complicated thing. It sounds so simple. It's like, oh, what triggers you? Well, here,
Yeah.
it's these 3 things. Well,
Yeah.
some people will say, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just don't feel good. That's what I used to say all the time. I don't know. I don't feel that. I just feel bad.
Yeah. So how do you think some of these triggers are formed? Like, where do they come from? Like, why do we get triggered by things?
I think there are, on the roadmap, we show in the very center page of that roadmap, we talk about what our typical triggers are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are 5 common ones that we see all the time. And they come from things from our past and also from today, right? And the 5 things would be self-doubt. So we just have either feel like we're not good enough, or we can't, we're not resourced to do something. That might create self-doubt. Particular people can certainly be things for us. Like the same time we have this, every time this person comes up or anytime I have to talk to this person, I just get this immediate reaction and I just don't like it. Certain situations, repetitive situations, family gatherings, leadership meetings. There's just a whole bunch of common situations that we have all the time that it's almost just like we keep scratching at a scab every Monday at 10 o'clock when this meeting is, because we just don't like how it goes. Unfavorable outcomes, like things aren't working out the way that you thought they would, and maybe you're a perfectionist and you hold it in such high responsibility of yourself to make things be certain ways. And then the other really common one that we always talk about is like unrealized feelings. So like feelings that you have that you've been carrying around for so long, you don't even realize it. And it takes very little of something else to push that water level over, as you talked about. So those are the kind of the 5 common big things. But I think it's really important I would ask you, like, what do you think? What are your things?
A lot of those things that you listed, I agree with, and there's like roots to some of that stuff, right? Like child, things that happen when you were a kid.
Oh yeah, family expectations. Or,
so there's social things and culture things, and like some of those things really stick with you a long time. Yeah, like getting teased at school is a great example because that maybe happened to you in 4th grade.
Yes.
And the person you are now in your 40s or 50s is a totally different person, I would argue, in that situation that happened, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, isn't applicable today.
Right.
But it sticks with you.
Right. Actually, yes, you're right.
So really, to me, when I've worked on this for myself, I have had to go and say, like, does that thing that happened in my childhood, is that serving me today, like, still? And what I kind of think about with triggers and feelings is, like, it's your brain and your body trying to protect you.
Yes.
Right? That's what it's trying to do. So
it's trying to neutralize something that was traumatic.
Yes. So it's not like something we're trying to completely stop because like sometimes when I get triggered, I kind of want to think to myself, thank you, body, for trying to protect me. However, this is not appropriate. Like this isn't applicable anymore. And then how can we reframe that thing, that response to something else?
That is really
but they're
good.
in there, it's hard to notice, and then it's hard to reframe, and it's hard to catch yourself the next time.
I think especially a lot of times during coaching, I'll have conversations with people about, first of all, they always try to make a big distinction. Well, I know you're not a family therapist. People will say things like that, but it's because they feel guilty or shameful about a feeling that they have from something when they were younger. And I always say, I am here for you as a person, not you as a title. So I don't care about those line delineations at all. And I think what happens a lot of the times is something that happened to us when we were young. We tell ourselves that story over and over again. And because we're not saying it out loud, it's just our voice that's telling the story. And the story morphs over time. And we either do exactly what you just described. We just try to be okay with it and reprocess, or we go to the opposite extreme. So, for example, being bullied at school. This is unfortunately a very common experience for so many people, being bullied at school. And it is a horrible, scary feeling when you're young. I have seen executives in boardrooms that are acting like huge bullies because they were teased when they were young. And they just think no matter what, they're going to, they're going to get out ahead of it, and it's never going to happen again. And a lot of times it's not even they're not consciously doing that whatsoever. But they might be angry about it, or a lot of times too, your mom or your dad puts so much pressure on you to be, a certain way. And the pressure of that constantly when it isn't who you are, but this need to make them happy, that can be very triggering. And so then when you see behavior that you recognize someone that looks a little like your parent or says something that your parent would have said when you were young, those are triggers.
Yeah.
Those are all triggers.
Yep. And you said something interesting where a way that some of that stuff manifests is kind of in some of these external ways, like, maybe if you were bullied, you might actually inadvertently act like a bully.
Yeah.
I find a lot of times when like I'm in that triggered state, like a lot of my thinking is like very self-focused.
Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of like, poor me, like this is happening to me. Like
Well, you're in
it all feels very
self-preservation.
personal.
Yeah. Right.
And then everything kind of starts feeling like a personal attack.
Yes. Yeah. And right here in the whole triggers model that we talk about, and I kind of sound like a infomercial today. I'm not trying. But also on our website, we do have a whole course. We have a specific lesson on triggers and a subsequent lesson after that about how to manage. And, there's a workbook piece to this and everything. I mean, it's really, really a deep topic, even though it can sound really sort of like, oh, yeah, this is it. Just quickly do that. But if anybody really is interested in it, because I think to the next thing that happens, we're talking about all these emotions and how we respond to them after we've been triggered. But what more often than not happens is rather than us sitting with that trigger, because here's the thing that people don't recognize, sitting with the trigger and unpacking it for just a little bit absolutely can release it, period. End of. I've seen it happen millions of times in huge ways. However, that seems really scary. To take something and sit with it when you've been avoiding it your whole life, right? So what we usually do, though, is we get triggered by something, and then we immediately try to shove it away. And I always say that which you resist persists. And we go right into guilt and shame about it. Guilt or shame, or maybe even both. Like, why do I act like this? Why do I get mad about this? Why does this person isn't worth anything to me? Why do I let them, we do this whole thing. Or we shame ourselves. Like, how come I can never fix this? Why am I broken?
Yeah. Why can't I be happy?
Why? Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Why can't I?
It can be very big sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the sad part, because then all of this wonderful messaging that your body is giving you and all these beautiful emotions that you're having, suddenly you make them wrong. You make yourself wrong, and you don't want to feel those things. But I always say, hey, when stuff like that's coming up, it's because it's coming up to get out. Like, these triggers are coming up for you so that you can manage and get them out, not so they can stay with you for your whole life. So there is huge hope in that. There's a huge benefit to being a little different in how you approach the whole idea of triggers.
So we spend a lot of time talking about triggers and how it feels when you're triggered. Let's just talk a couple of minutes about how it feels when you are in that centered space, when you are in
It's such a good one.
when you're in your more natural, authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the backside of dealing with triggers and actually processing them is this time spent in your authentic self. And I, as I've gotten older and as I've worked on this, I am able to spend more and more and more time in my authentic self. I recognize it, and here's what's weird: other people recognize it instantly. And I just feel generally like I want to hear you two talk about it. I've been dominating this morning or today as we're talking here.
I love hearing from you.
Yeah, but I feel like being really in your authentic self, you become a beacon for other people, not because you're trying and not because that's your intention, nothing like that, but because people recognize how it looks and feels when you are centered. And so I always say centered is like, I feel calm. My whole body feels settled. My brain isn't running or racing or jumping 75 steps ahead. Just really present and everything. I'm a really good listener because I'm so receptive to what's being said because I'm neutral. It's just a neutral ground. And I just feel like it's really easy to be here when I'm here.
Yeah.
What about you? How does it feel when you're like that? Like, how does it feel?
Yeah, pretty content. Like there's not, I wouldn't say like I'm overly happy or sad. I'm just kind of content.
Yeah.
And everything is easy. And we had an episode about being in the flow. And to me, it's very similar. It's like everything just in life comes easy. It all works out. Like just everything kind of unfolds in a way that just totally works out. Not worried about anything. It feels light.
Yeah. And if don't you kind of feel really effective? Whatever you turn your attention to, it's so easy. Even piles of work, even conversations that are more difficult. If you're in your centered space, that is all way easier. And it's just it's a one, and the environment feels like that. Everything around you just feels calm, stabilized. You don't feel anxious at all. It's the absence of all of the negative feelings that you possess in your body, right? It's the absence of all of those things.
Yeah, it's like it feels supportive to me.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of like the universe somehow is in support of me.
Yeah.
But when I'm triggered, it's just like everything's out to get me.
Yeah, or you're certainly expecting it to, so you don't want to engage with that.
Yeah.
I feel like, I think that we talk about triggers a lot and we help people identify triggers a lot. I think that the way through them, first of all, is the motivation of how you feel when you're not triggered. That's a huge motivator. And I also think that I would want to say you absolutely can release your triggers. Even if you are 60 years old and you've had the same emotions about something over and over again, it is never too late. And it is always worth it. And just reflecting on what that trigger is about, reflecting on where did it come from? How long have I felt like that? And then I always would say, like refocus your thinking a little bit to what, in the absence of this, what's here for me? If I didn't have this trigger happening, how would that feel? And am I ready to let this go now? Because I held on to it for a long time and it served me. Like I did a lot with it. I needed it. It's not bad. I'm not judging myself. But at this stage of my life, if it keeps coming up, I know I'm ready to let it go. Can I and will I allow myself to do such? And it's all 100% self-decision. It's nobody else's business. It's nobody else's opinion. You can go to therapy for 100 years and it won't help you with a different attitude. But with this attitude, it can change for you immediately. I've seen it.
Awesome.
So there you go. There's my soapbox.
Nice job.
Woo! Oh, people, I'm so sorry if you just went, wow, what was that all about?
No, this is great. It's so good to remind ourselves of this because, we have so many episodes that actually do talk
Yeah.
about the details and the framing and the nuances of all of these different feelings that we have all the time.
Yeah.
But the overarching thing is that how do you recognize them and how do you
Yep.
get back to your centered state?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I hope this helps somebody today.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.